If China or any other country is charging us 100 or 200% tariff or tax, then we will charge them 100 or 200%. And we'll also pass the Trump Reciprocal Trade Act. In other words, it's an eye for an eye.
A few minutes back, Donald Trump spoke to Xi Jinping. The call came out of the blue. No one was expecting this, especially after Xi Jinping declined Donald Trump's invite. Trump wanted to have him at his inauguration ceremony. Instead, Xi Jinping will be sending one of his deputies. He is not coming. So what did Trump and Xi talk about? We're still waiting for the full details, but Donald Trump says he discussed TikTok and the fentanyl crisis. Of course, trade is one of his top priorities too. Next week, he'll be back in the White House. On his first day in office, he plans to disrupt global trade. Trump is preparing for a new trade war with China, one that could impact India too. If Trump hikes tariffs on Chinese goods, India won't be insulated from the fallout. That is what we're going to discuss tonight. Indian businesses, manufacturers, exporters, they're all vulnerable. They stand to lose from this trade war between the US and China. In fact, some of them are already feeling the pressure. Companies in at least 3 sectors are affected: electronics, solar, and EV or electric vehicles. Some firms in these sectors rely on China for their supplies. They're now facing delays and disruptions. If Trump follows through on his plan, then more Indian firms could face difficulties because China has every intention to retaliate. Beijing won't just sit back and watch. China has prepared a comprehensive playbook, a detailed plan on how to tackle Trump's trade war. They've gamed out all scenarios. Let's tell you what we know so far and the risks that Indian companies face from this potential trade war. We will start with the obvious question: what happens if Trump raises tariffs on Chinese goods? He has repeatedly made this threat, first on the campaign trail, then after winning the election. He keeps talking about it. He's most likely going to walk the talk. Trump says he wants more taxes on Chinese goods. He's yet to spell out the specifics, but he has proposed a range, 10 to 60% in additional taxes on Chinese imports. That's what he wants. And he's obsessed with this plan. Donald Trump says tariff is his favorite word.
And I say the most beautiful word in the entire dictionary of words is the word tariff. I love tariff. I can make anybody do anything through the use of tariffs. Just so I don't get myself in trouble, I'm going to say the third most beautiful: love and religion. And then the word tariff.
Effectively, Trump wants to raise the entry barrier on Chinese imports. He wants to make it harder for China to send goods to America. Beijing plans to respond to this in 2 ways. First, by finding new markets for its goods. And for this, Asia is on China's radar, specifically India. Experts have warned about this. They say that if China loses the US market, it could start pushing more goods into India. They're warning about Chinese dumping. And that is the first risk, the glut of Chinese goods in Indian markets. The second risk is on the manufacturing side. Many Indian companies rely on China for raw materials, for parts, for components. We spoke about electronics, solar, and EVs a bit earlier. These sectors heavily depend on Chinese supplies. And Trump's trade war could hurt this supply. Meanwhile, China is planning export restrictions. It has changed some rules recently in an effort to weaponize supplies, to use supply chains as leverage against the United States. So if America targets Chinese imports, China could block critical supplies. It could target manufacturers in America as well as countries like India. Remember, India has been positioning itself as an alternative to China, as a player that can replace Chinese supplies in developed markets like the US. So for China, India is also a rising threat. It is already targeting Indian suppliers. Indian firms are talking about informal restrictions. What does that mean? What is informal restrictions? It's exactly what it sounds like. Without any formal announcement, Chinese exporters are cutting supplies to India. And the Indian government has been concerned about this. Recently, the Ministry of Electronics and IT weighed in. It raised complaints from Indian manufacturers. They say that they're unable to source equipment. Component supplies are being held back, and so is skilled manpower from China. You see, Chinese companies often send professionals to India. These professionals provide training to Indian workers. But now Indian manufacturers are complaining because the Chinese professionals are no longer available. The worst hit of the lot is Foxconn. Foxconn is the world's biggest iPhone manufacturer. It has factories in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka in India. These facilities are used to assemble iPhones. Foxconn has stopped deploying Chinese workers to these factories. Instead, it is sending staff from Taiwan. And this trend might catch on because India is going to have to identify alternatives like Taiwan. Last year, China was India's largest source of imports. But if this trade war between the US and China intensifies, if Trump increases trade pressure on Beijing, India could feel the impact. China was already an unpredictable customer to deal with. The next US president is set to make it worse.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.